Canon EF 40mm STM lens was Canon's first EF lens that included their new stepping motor a few years ago, which allows for much smoother and quieter autofocusing. The Canon T4i was the first camera that took advantage of this feature, but other cameras can still use the lens. This was also Canon's first EF pancake lens, the name due to its flat design and not to the tasty breakfast food. So much for my up-and-coming cooking show. But on to the lens review. This lens is going to come in at $199. It is an EF mount, so you'll be able to use it on APS-C crop-censored cameras, as well as full-frame 35mm cameras. Although using such a small lens on a full-frame body would look a bit odd. At 40mm, it's pretty clear that this was designed for full-frame cameras more than crop-censored cameras, even though one of the only cameras that could support this technology when this lens came out was a crop-censored camera. The aperture comes in at f2.8, which keeps the lens in better than average category when comparing to stock lenses, but it won't even come close to the aperture of Canon's nifty 50 f1.8 lens. With a body that is practically the size of a lens cap, it comes in at only 130 grams. It has a 52mm filter size, similar to that found on the Canon 50mm f1.8 lens. There are 6 elements in 4 groups in this lens. I'll be honest, I'm still trying to figure out what that means. And the closest focusing distance you can get with this lens is 0.98 feet or 0.3 meters. I've never used a pancake lens before this, so my experience was definitely a unique one. Attaching this lens to my T3i made it feel more like an oversized point-and-shoot than ever before, but with killer quality of course. So that STM autofocusing system lets the lens focus more easily and quietly than traditional focus motors in Canon lenses. However, like I mentioned earlier, this only works on cameras that support the technology, so unfortunately my T3i doesn't fall into this category, so I was unable to take full advantage of this feature. Also when focusing, the end of the lens protrudes out when focusing, but not by much, and certainly not enough to make this lens seem any larger. Taking photos is quite simple, and with this lens, photos look pretty great, but I feel that the 40mm definitely makes this a lens that is far more suitable for full-frame cameras, as 40mm made shooting photos and videos rather tight when indoors. Also, not having image stabilization for this made getting steady photos rather difficult, and when getting close-ups and shooting video indoors, it was rather impossible to get a steady shot. Unless you're using a tripod, getting halfway decent looking photos and video is nearly next to impossible when you have shaky hands. Clearly, this was a lens that was made to work within a studio environment or outdoors in much brighter situations. It is a great lens for people to have around, but taking photos and video on a crop sensor feels incredibly tight. Full frame is definitely going to be a different experience, since it will give you a wider field of view. The build of this lens is clean, simple, and could allow anyone to have a lens at all times for how small it is. But I also feel I wouldn't even use this in a studio environment, as I would go straight for my Canon 50mm f1.8, or use something in the field that at least had IS. But for Canon's first attempt at bringing pancake lenses back, it is definitely impressive, and most likely responsible for getting Canon back into the game of making flat pancake lenses. So in conclusion, if you have a full-frame camera, definitely check out this lens. If you have a crop sensor, feel free to do the same. But for those looking for a pancake made specifically for crop-censored cameras, I have something else coming in the not-too-distant future that I think you might enjoy.